Hello everybody, it's Murray here. Welcome back to my channel, STEWART Paintings. On today's acrylic painting tutorial, we're going to paint this gorgeous tropical beach painting. I'm going to teach you how to texturize and create bushes and tropical plants. I'm going to teach you how to paint palm trees, especially easy using a flat brush. I'm going to teach you how to then add details for things such as bark and texturize on your sand, how to paint gorgeous turquoise tropical water so you can paint this gorgeous tropical beach acrylic painting. So let's get into it. So for the tutorial I used the following colours. They are titanium white, cad yellow, yellow ochre, cad orange light, raw sienna, light green, chromium oxide, sap green, turquoise, cerulean blue, cobalt blue, raw umber and ivory black. Now I've got a raw sienna stained canvas that I've used chalk just to create an outline of the horizon. We're going to have some ocean, some seafoam, some wet sand and some lovely beach, some tropical bushes and some beautiful palm trees and a beautiful blue sky to push it back. So if you'd like to pause the video, you can always copy down the outline, and we'll start at the back and we'll create the sky as always. And we're going to get some titanium white. I'm going to use a big brush because we're just going to block her in. We're going to add some cerulean blue, but plenty of titanium white, and we're going to make a lovely pastel horizon colour. So a good rule of thumb, the horizon is always lighter. Oops, I've got hair on my canvas here. Just scruff it away. The horizon is always lighter than the top of the sky. So we're always going to make the horizon nice and pastel. And because we want a nice tropical blue sky, we're just going to make this a nice pastel light blue. Now don't worry, you don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna if you're thinking at home. I always do because it just helps me see where I need to thicken up the paint. Sometimes with acrylics they're a little bit watery, so it's a good rule of thumb just to paint it burnt sienna and you can see where you need to thicken up the paint. Now all I'm doing here, I'm just creating a second mix, which is lots of titanium white, cerulean blue and a little bit of cobalt blue just to make it a little bit darker. Just a tad of cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is a bit darker, so we're just making it a little bit darker blue. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to block in the painting and I'm just going to cover up the sky. The good thing about the outline, it's all dry and it's quite dark, so you can see through it. So look, if we paint over our palm trees, they're still there in the background. So don't worry, you can always copy down the outline and then paint over the top. So we're just going to cover this right hand corner and we should have a blue sky. Now as I say, I always paint my canvas burnt sienna simply for this fact. You can see really clearly, look, because acrylics are water based, sometimes they leave horrible brush marks and streaks, and sometimes you just need to thicken the paint up. So I think that mix had way too much water. So look, I'm going to get loads of thick paint, loads of titanium white, a little bit of cerulean blue, really big thick dollop of paint. My canvas is dry, and look, by just putting a coat of paint over the top, look how different that looks. It looks so much brighter, more vibrant and more realistic. So if you're ever painting along at home and you get sort of scruffy, watery marks, just dry your painting with a hairdryer and just thicken up your paint, have less water on your brush and on your palette, and then just give it a second coat of paint like I'm doing, and it makes your work look much more vibrant and realistic. So again, we just got the pastel colour at the bottom. We're just mixing some cerulean blue. So lots of paint, a little bit of white, not too much. So cerulean blue, a little bit of cobalt blue just to make it cooler. Here we go. And we're just going to mix that, coming down and create X shapes into that nice pastel blue. And we're just going to block in the rest of the painting. So as I say, you don't have to paint your canvas burnt sienna. I just do it. I know a lot of artists here on YouTube do it. It's an old trick. Funny enough, I was never taught it, but I just really, really like it. And I think it really, really helps. So as we move up, I'm just going to add a little bit more cerulean blue and a little bit more cobalt blue. I'm just going to make it a shade darker. So what you want to do is you want to have your horizon at the bottom really, really light, and your top of your corners of your lovely blue sky really, really dark. So we're just going to make that nice and dark. Nice and blended. And then where's the big jump? I'm just going to clean my brush. I'm just going to go back to the lighter shade, the pastel shade that we first created. I'm just going to get a little bit of the paint off, and I'm just going to create the X shapes, and I'm just going to move my way upwards and just blend that sky, just so there's not a big jump in the colours, so it all blends together, so it looks like it's fading off into the distance, because that's what we want. So there we go, that looks really pretty. And then the opposite, I'm just going to get some of the darker colour, and I'm going to add a tiny bit more cobalt blue, and I'm just going to make the corners a little bit darker, so it creates sort of like a, I don't know how you pronounce it, where you've just made your corners darker. I know a lot of photographers do this, and again it gets people to draw into the middle of your painting. So just by making the corners darker and just blending that darker blue, it just frames our painting. It's just an old trick. So we've got our lovely blue sky, and I've dried my painting with a hairdryer, and I'm going to get some white and some cerulean blue to create that horizon colour. So white and a tiny bit of cerulean blue. I'm going to get a dry brush, and I'm going to wipe away most of the paint, so I've got a nice chalky residue. And because the canvas is nice and dry, I'm going to keep to the left hand side, because I want to have my palm trees on the right hand side. And I'm going to create some really low fluffy clouds. Now I think this brush I picked up was a bit dirty, so mine look a bit manky, but don't worry, that's the great thing about acrylics. If you do make a boo-boo, make a mistake, you can always just let it dry and just go over the top with some cleaner paint. So I think mine's a bit musty, a bit manky. So we just want to create a nice fluffy cloud in the background. So by having a dry brush and having a soft bristle brush, you can just push against the canvas. You can wipe away most of the paint, look, and you can push down really hard if you want to get big chunky marks. And if you want to make it really wispy, you just ease up on the pressure and just let it go and just barely touch the canvas, and it will create nice fluffy marshmallow clouds. So we want them really pastel and far away. So look, if I zoom in, look, so if you wipe away most of the paint, look, most of the paint, so you've just got that chalky residue, and then look, if you just barely touch the canvas, it just leaves a little chalky imprint, and it's great for creating marshmallow clouds. So look, get some paint on your little fluffy brush, wipe away most of it, and then look, this area where we had our mucky clouds, we can just sort of look, you can go over them, make them even brighter. So as I say, if you have a cloud that looks a bit ropey and you just want to highlight it a little bit, just go over the top, just like we did with our sky. You can make areas brighter by just giving it a second coat of paint. So look, just by going over the top, there's nothing you can't fix. That's why acrylics are perfect for beginners and intermediate painters, because they're really forgiving. If you make a mistake, you can just dry your work and go over the top. So at the horizon, you get loads of nice little sort of clouds that sort of make it all like far and wispy and far away. So we just want to sort of create that look that is just all fading off into the distance. We're going to have our palm trees kind of in the middle here, so I'm just going to go around them and just have some clouds that might just be peeking out in the corner. So let's just lighten this area up a little bit. I don't want to just use a big blob of white paint because it will just be overpowering. So that's why I was saying to use a dry brush. Just wipe away most of the paint, because we want to push these clouds really far into the distance. So There we go. Let's have a big one. Look, if I push down, look really hard, it gives a nice big imprint. But if I ease up on the pressure, you can get just sort of little wispy ones. And a lot of this we're going to cover up with the palm trees, but it's just a good way to do it. So they're really nice and they're really pushed back, and we've got this lovely fading away with the horizon nice and light. So now we're going to work on all the sort of tropical bushes in the background. So you're going to have loads of palm trees and tropical foliage. So we're going to mix some sap green, which is dark green, and some cobalt blue together. We're going to add a little bit of brown just to suck a bit of the colour out and make it darker. So cobalt blue, which is really nice and cool, sap green, which is dark green, and a little bit of raw umber brown. And what we're going to do, where I had the outline, we're not going to go too far up to that outline. We're just going to go sort of 3/4 up. So I'll show you when I get to the top. And we're just going to block in this shadow colour. So this is the colour underneath all the leaves. So what we're doing, we're going to use this really nice dark musty green. And where the top bit of our outline is, I'm just going to go up to about here. I'm not going to go fully up into it because I'm going to create leaves and shapes up at the top. So I'm just going to go up to about 3/4. I'm just going to leave a little bit there, and then we're going to go around our nice tropical palm tree. We're going to have some little ones fading off into the distance, but let's just block in this area. So we're going to go around our tree trunk. And then as we fade off into the distance, this green sort of gets lighter because it's fading away. So we're going to add a little bit of white and a little bit of sap green and a little bit of cobalt blue. Cobalt blue is really good at pushing things back into the distance. Got a little bit of our brown just to take away the colour, and a little bit more cobalt blue just to push it back. So we've got this nice musty green now that's even lighter. And we're just going to block in this area, and it should push that tip of that far off tropical bushes into the distance. So just like our sky is fading away, we want to trick the eye, and all I'm going to do, I'm going to use the darker green just on this corner just to sort of blend it, just like we did with our sky, so you don't notice the jump in colour. So look, by just going from the dark to the light, I'm just blending it just so you don't notice the big jump from dark to light. Now we're going to swap to a flat brush. Now a flat brush is absolutely perfect for painting palm trees in a really easy fashion. So we're going to take our dark colour that we mixed first, we're going to load up our flat brush, and where we went 3/4 down, we're going to create sort of like the top of pineapples. If you think of a pineapple, we're going to create sort of spiky, sort of Mohican-like hair. We're going to create these little spiky tops of these tropical plants. And all I'm doing, I'm using the flat edge of the brush. Because the brush has got a totally flat edge, it's really, really easy to paint spikes. So these spiky leaves that sort of come out, I'm just using the very flat edge of the brush to create sort of diagonal spikes that are coming out from this foliage. So load up your brush, look, watch, and just create little shapes. You can have them going in all different directions, some going up, some going to the left, some going to the right. You just want to create sort of a variety, and you want them all sort of like we've done in previous tutorials, you want them all sort of different heights and shapes to make it look realistic. You don't want them all sort of the same height and all the leaves the same length. You want to make some long, some short. So there we go. So think of like the top of a pineapple, how it sort of spikes up. We kind of want to do that at the top of these plants. And because we haven't gone fully up into the sky, we've got little gaps, you see. And I'll teach you in a minute, like we've done in previous tutorials, how to poke some holes in our foliage to create some realism. But we just want to create just sort of the tops of these far off palm trees as they sort of fade off into the distance. So if I zoom in for you so you can see a little bit better, we're going to use this colour which is called light green. It's just a really bright light green. We're going to add some brown to it to suck a bit of the colour out. And we're going to use our flat brush, and on top we're just going to create shapes to create the illusion of leaves. So again, same principle, we've got this dark colour underneath, and all I'm doing, I'm using the edge of this brush, look, to create shapes. So think of a palm tree, it sort of curls round, and then you have these sort of spindly spines that sort of hang down. So what you can do, look, you can create the curve, and then you can go downwards with your brush. So create the curve and then go downwards with the brush, and you can create the sort of spindly spines of the leaves. I hope that makes sense. I'm not very good at explaining palm trees, but I hope that makes sense. And I'm just going to get two versions of this colour. So I'm going to have one with some brown and one without some brown and just pure bright green. So one with some brown. And the one with brown I'm just going to put first. I'm just going to put that one first, just where it's getting some light, just so it looks a bit more yellowy. But I'm leaving gaps in the underpainting to shine through, so that shadow colour can shine through. And by having all these different sort of shapes, little different kind of shades, with the one's bright green and one's this yellowy green, you get like some areas that look like they're getting the sunlight, and some areas that it looks like it's in the shade, you see. So use the brush's edge and just look, you can even use it for long grass. So look, at the bottom you get this sort of long tropical grass. And I'm trying to leave big bits in the middle where you've got bits of shade. And we're going to use, look, some of this bright green just on the tips. I'm going to have the sun coming from the left hand side, so why don't we do that? And then everything's sort of reflecting on the left side in the sun. So these little palm trees and the tops of them will be getting lots of nice sunlight. So we're just going to make the left sort of edge brighter with this lighter green. So we're just trying to texturize it. It's very similar to the tree tutorial we did recently. We want to lay down the shadow color, and you can look, you can even add a little bit of black, blue, a little bit of black and blue to make a really dark shadow color. Some brown and a tiny bit of sap green. So that we've got a really dark colour. It's not quite black, still got some blue and green and brown in it. And just here, this area is going to be nearest to us. Look, we can create some really dark shadows. So as the trees hang over, it really sort of creates dark, sort of almost silhouettes. So again, we're just putting some different sort of chunks just so it creates texture. Just different shapes and sizes. And I've just realised where I was going to have a tree here, I've left a big gap. That's not good on a tutorial. God, it's not very professional. So I better fill that in a minute. So let's just put some shadows here. So I'm just trying to use that dark colour just to create a little bit of separation and harshness in this nearest foliage. Can even have a little bit of shadow here. So if you think, just like any of the tutorials, the shadows get harsher as they come nearer to the viewer. So we want to use that dark colour nearest to us, but not far off into the distance, because that will bring it forward. So we're going to mix some cad yellow and our light green together to create a lime green. So lime green is just yellow and bright green mixed together, and you get sort of a colour of a bright lime. We're going to a little bit of brown, just to make it, again, suck a bit of the colour out, make it more realistic. And we're just going to put some highlights. Now we've got all the texture, we're just going to add some highlights using the outside of that brush. So again, certain areas I just want sort of sparkling in the sun. I'm just adding this bright yellowy green, just so it looks like they're getting heated up by a bit of sunlight. And it's a nice contrast between the hots of the highlights and the cools of the shadows, you see. So we're just texturizing all this area. And remember, acrylics always dry darker, they always dry a bit flat. So they look really vibrant now, but it should dry nice and flat. And then push this back to make this all look like it's far off into the distance. So look, all I'm doing is I'm just trying to think which areas are going to be getting a little bit of sunlight. And these areas right on the tip are going to get quite a lot of sunlight. So I'm just moving my brush in different directions, just creating different chunks. And then I better fill this area in that I forgot. Whoopsie daisy. So I'm just going to use the combination of colours we just mixed. As I say, that is so cool about acrylics. You can just fix anything. No one would notice unless I told you. I should have just edited it out, shouldn't I? But never mind. It pays to be honest. So there we go. Let's create a little bit of shadow there. So let's just texturize that area so no one would know. There we go. We'll start putting some trees on. So there we go. So I don't want to use that really harsh shadow in that tip because it will bring it forward. So what we're going to do now, we're going to get some brown and we're going to paint some faraway tree trunks. So we're going to get some brown and black and we're going to put plenty of white to create a nice browny grey. So brown, black and plenty of white, and you should get this lovely sort of warm browny grey. And we're going to use that for our tree trunks, and we're going to use the sharp edge of our flat brush. So we're going to turn our brush upright and we're just going to come down. Now if you're a bit nervous and you haven't got a steady hand, please dry your painting before you attempt this, and then if it goes wrong you can always just wipe away these trees and you'll still have your gorgeous tropical plants in the background. So a good rule of thumb if you're doing any of my tutorials, if you ever get a little bit nervous, I know painting is wonderful for people who have anxiety. I'm going to hopefully make a tutorial about that, video about that. But if you ever do get a bit like nervous, just to ensure your work, just dry your work, and then you can always put these over the top, and if any go wrong you can always just wipe them away with a baby wipe and your lovely tropical plants will still be there in the background. So we're just going to come out and we're just using this nice pastel browny grey, and what it should do is it should make these trees look like they're far off into the distance. So why not, let's have a big one just at the edge of our painting. I'll zoom out in a minute so you can see it. So I'm just going to have a big one just here on the right edge, just to frame it. And then all I'm going to do, I'm just going to get some brown and I'm just going to mix that into the mix so it's still very white. I don't want it overbearing and just being pure brown, so I'm just going to mix it into our grey. And just on the right hand side, I'm just going to use the sharp edge just to create a shadow on the right hand side. So what you should have is on the left hand side you've got this nice grey, and on the right hand side you've got this darker pastel brown. So it just looks like one area's in the shade and one's in the sunlight, just to make it look 3D. So again, try to keep your hand steady, just relax, take your time. Please, if you are going at home, painting at home and you find it too fast, just pause the video. You don't have to keep up at this pace. So I'm going to mix some green and brown again, and I'm going to create a palm tree. So think of stars, think of a shape of a star. We're just going to kind of create a star shape at the end of these trunks. So all I'm doing, look, I'm using the brush and I'm using the edge just to sort of create a diagonal sort of star shape. So I'm coming out one way and then I'm coming out the other way. And I'm just get some of the darker green that we mixed up, and I'm just going underneath it. So look, I'm just using the sharp edge of the brush and I'm just coming out and then I'm creating these little spindly spines that hang down from the leaves. So look, you can create these really nice sharp edges, and then look, you can create these little spindly sort of spines that come down. Look, just coming down. Look at that, just using the sharp edge of the brush. So flat brushes cost literally £1 or $1 in any art shop. You can get them online. I've got I've got information in the description box for the video. I appreciate not everyone who watches lives all around the world, but I've got links to shops in America and the UK. But you can buy them in an art shop for literally £1 or $1. And it makes painting palm trees just so much easier. So we're just having some really tiny ones here in the distance, again to create sort of some perspective. So we want them really small, and I've got hardly any paint. I don't want to make that paint too dark because it'll bring it forward. But the paintbrush itself makes your life so much easier. So rather than using a big blobby thick brush, by using this really sharp brush, you get the really nice sharp look. Create the curved shape of the brush, of the leaf, excuse me. So look, create the curve, and then create the spines coming downwards. So look, we have some little diagonals. So we're just blocking them in. When we do the really big one, you can see it in full effect when we do the big one with the big trunk here in the foreground. So this one's going to be kind of medium. So all I tend to do is to create a curved sort of shape of the branch, and then I come down straight with the brush and create the sort of spiny leaves. So I create the nice curve first, and then I come straight down with my brush like that. So here's the curve, and then I come straight down, look, straight down to create sort of teeth, these sort of spindly spines that hang down. So use the brush's edge to create the curve, and then come down with the sharp edge of the brush. And as I say, you just kind of want to create sort of a star sort of shape. I hope that makes sense. So let's have these ones. So curve around and then bring it down. Now these ones are a bit messy because we'll go over them in a little bit of detail in a minute. We're going to get some lighter green and yellow. And just like we did with our bushes, we're just going to highlight these areas because again, these bits are going to be in the sun. So again, look, just by highlighting the left hand side of these palm trees, we can make it look like it's a bit more in the sun. And now think of yin and yang. If they're in the sun, one side's going to be in the cool of the shade. So what we're going to do is we're going to get some sap green, which is darker, mix it with a tiny bit of brown. So sap green is just dark green. They have all these posh names, but it's just dark green. And then look, we're just going to make the opposite side, so the right hand side, a bit cooler. So think of anything. One side's got a hot side, a highlight, and one side's got a cool shadow. So by just using different shades of green, we can create really nice 3D realistic palm trees. You can darken areas up or lighten areas. So there we go, I'm just going over the top, just making this one a little bit darker. I'm just going to make the side of that tree trunk a little bit harsher. I'm going to do the same on this one. So I'm just going to make it a bit darker because these ones are nearest. So again, think of what I've been saying. I'm just going to create some little knocks on it, just so it's got some texture. Just think of the bark. So as I say, all shadows in the foreground that are nearer the viewer are always a bit darker. I've got my light here on the right hand side, so it's a bit blared in the sunlight. But this area on the right hand side is a bit darker. So just doing the same on this palm tree. And then this area looks really, really cool. But we're going to poke some holes in the foliage, and we're going to create some of the sky colour. So we're going to create some of the horizon colour first, which was the lighter shade of blue, which was light blue. So cerulean blue and lots of white, please. And just like many of the tutorials where we poke holes in the clouds, or we poke holes in the trees, we're just going to do that to create some of the realism. So just think where there's little areas of pockets of sky in the background that are shining through the leaves. So by just poking some holes just randomly, it just looks like areas of the sky are poking through, and again it just creates more realism. And all you want to do is just try to match the colours. So if you've got the lighter blue at the bottom here, try using the lighter blue that we mixed up earlier. And if you go up into the sky, we obviously add more cerulean blue to make a darker blue. And then look, we do the exact same trick. And if you've got any of the background where look, I've missed a bit, look, you can just fill it in. Because I've got a bit of white here, I'm just going to fill it in. So look, you can just make little holes to make all these branches and leaves look a bit more elongated and realistic. And it just adds to the realism. It's a little trick. There we go. So just add some little shapes. And it just looks like little bits of sky poking through. We'll blend it with our finger like a professional. There we go. So that looks pretty realistic already. So we've got this lovely sky and we've got all these lovely tropical foliage here. And we're going to paint a really big palm tree and bring it closer to the viewer. So we're going to use a darker shadow because we want it nearer to the viewer. So we're going to use black and some cobalt blue. So it's a little bit of black, lots of cobalt blue, some raw umber brown. And we're going to make an off black, so not quite pure black, an off black. And we're going to use our flat brush and we're going to paint a really big palm tree here. That's going to take pride center stage. So we're going to use that sharp edge. And as I say, if you're nervous or anything, dry your work before you attempt this. And then if you make a mistake, you've still got that beautiful shrubs and bushes in the background. So always think, dry your work at each stage, and then if you make a mistake, look, you can just wipe it away. But you want to make sort of these palm trees, they curve outwards from the floor, don't they? They sort of seek the sun and they sort of curve outwards. They're so cool. So we're going to use this dark colour as a shadow tone. And as I say, because it's nearer to the viewer, we want it darker. So we're going to bring it towards the viewer. We're going to try to make it curved. So I'm just stepping back and I'm just seeing how curved it is. So I want to make its curve here a little bit more. And always try to make the base of the trunk wider than the top tip of the tree, please. So try to make where it touches the sand a little bit thicker than the top where all the leaves come out. And while I've got that dark colour, I'm just going to add some more shadows here in the foreground. So look, it's the same principle. Look, we're going to use our brush. We're going to just create some coconuts here at the top, and kind of like a star shape coming out. And I can still see roughly my outline of those little spindles for our leaves. So let's make the base here a little bit wider, like I was saying. So if I zoom in so you can see a little bit better. So we're going to load up my brush. Just going to put a tiny bit of sap green in, just a tiny bit. And all I'm going to do, look, I'm going to create the curve first with the edge of the brush. So look, I'm going to create the curve. So I'm going to curve it down. And then I'm going to come down with the sharp edge and create sort of these spindly teeth. So watch, these little spikes. So come down straight, okay? Look at that. Really easy. And then on the opposite side, I'm just going to do the same, but I'm going to go diagonally. So where I'm hanging down, so think of gravity, it's pulling those leaves down. On the other side, they're sort of shooting out because the leaf is curved. So I'm coming out sort of diagonally. See that? So look, I'm coming out diagonally. So if you do the spine of the leaf first, that sort of curve, and then you come down on the bottom end. So look, come down on the bottom side and sort of come out diagonally on the top end. It should look very realistic. I hope that's a good explanation. So look, curve it round. So curve it round and then have the ones on the underneath coming downwards. So look, curve the spine of the leaf down and have the ones coming down, coming straight down. And then have the top side. We can have some spikes up here. Let's have some spikes. So if you think, we're always trying to lay the shadow colour first and then we can lay the highlights on top to complement it. So we're going to have some spikes here at the top. So let's create a big one. Let's have a big leaf, look, hanging down. So it curls round and then the teeth come downwards. Look at that. Same principle. And then the other ones come a bit diagonally. So let's curve it right round, come out diagonally. There you go. Super easy way to paint palm trees. And it's the brush. I keep going on about this magical brush. The flat brush. It is so cool and it's so easy. And you don't have to be good at painting. It's just a really easy trick and it will make your life so much easier. Flat brushes are really, really good for painting straight lines. If you've ever got to paint anything like a building, you've got to paint something like signs, a pier, anything straight, they are really, really good. So they're perfect for things like tree trunks and these lovely palm leaves. So let's have this one in the foreground. And if you can see, look, because the tree is a lot darker, it's coming towards the viewer. And what it's doing is it's pushing the other ones into the background. So you see how it tricks your eye? So by having a darker green with that sort of black, that off black, it brings this tree forward. So we're going to get some of the chromium oxide green, which is just a medium tinge green, so a medium green. If you haven't got chromium oxide green, because I appreciate you haven't, not everyone's got that, just add a little bit of yellow to your green. And what we're going to do is just on the tips of our leaves, we're just going to elongate them, so we're just coming down from them and we're just making them a bit brighter because again these ones are in the sun. So where we've got that nice dark outline, I'm just sort of outlining these leaves with this brighter green just so it looks like they're hitting the sunlight. So that I'm just going right on the edges of these dark shadows, and I'm just making all the leaves look like they're in the sunlight. On the left, so you can have some just getting some sunlight. So just try to think where the light would be hitting. Not so much here at the bottom, but really at the top, wouldn't it? The sun would be coming from above. So these ones at the top would be a bit brighter. So it's pretty. And again, if you go a bit gung-ho with your leaves, I'll show you at the end, you can poke holes in and put a bit more of the sky back, just like we did with the foliage in the background. So our leaves are looking a bit. So I'm going to get some green and some yellow Our leaves are looking a bit binged together, but we can add some space between them using some of the sky colour towards the end, so don't worry about that. So again, look, we're just going to highlight them. So just on the tips, we're just going to add some yellow and green. So just really on the tips. So again, these areas are getting bleached by the sun. And again, it creates like a 3D effect where it looks like one area is in the highlights and one area is in the shade. Just adds more texture as well. It creates realism. So, as I say, take your time, relax, go at your own speed. Don't forget to like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. I massively appreciate everyone who's likes and subscribed already and supports the channel. I really appreciate it. The channel is doing really well. And don't forget to tag me at STEWART Paintings with your version of the tutorials. I get tagged every week with some amazing versions of my tutorials. Some the same days I post the videos, and they are incredible. So well done everyone. I have a little Hall of Fame section on my Instagram that I like to show off everyone's tutorials. So well done everyone for posting them. So don't forget to tag me at STEWART Paintings here on YouTube or on Instagram and Facebook. So you can even go along the stem with this nice bright yellowy green. So on the underneath of the leaves, sometimes you get this really bright sort of spine on the stem of the leaf. And I'm going to come down onto the tree trunk where you get the sort of green part of the tree and the tree trunk sort of meet each other. And then we're going to mix up a bark colour. So we're going to get some raw umber brown and some white to create a nice pastel creamy brown. And we're going to go down the middle of our tree trunk, and we're just going to leave a little tiny black edge on the left hand side. And this is going to be sort of the colour of our bark. We're going to swap to a fine liner, and we're just going to come up and join it to that nice yellowy green. And then we're going to switch our brush sideways, and we're just going to create these little curved divots. So where you get these lovely sort of curves, you get this sort of wrap around sort of bark. You get these sort of little divots on palm trees. So because we've got the lovely shadow colour underneath, and now we've got this cool sort of warm brown, we can create an illusion of a 3D bark. So again, look, you're learning all these tricks that are so easy to do. So if one side's cool, the other side's going to be a bit warmer. So how are we going to do that? We're going to use a warm colour. So we're going to get some yellow and purple just to create a little bit of a gold. We're going to add lots of white. So yellow and a tiny bit of purple, lots of white, and just on this edge you're going to have some of the sand colour sort of reflecting onto this edge. So we're just going to give it a nice warm edge. So there we go, just highlight the edge. I'll neaten it up in a minute. I just want this nice warm edge. There we go. And then we're just going to create our knocks again. So we're just going to join them up. And it should look like the sunlight sort of beaming up from one side. So one side's cool and one side's hot. And then because that's a little bit scruffy, we're just going to get some more white and add it to the mix. Excuse me, it's a bit off camera, but all I'm doing is just adding a little bit more white to the mix. And I'm getting the very tip of my fine liner, and I've got a steady hand, and I'm just going to go right around the edge of this tree to give it a really nice sharp edge. Can you see that? So I'm just giving it a really harsh whitey yellow edge, and again just linking up those knocks. And it should go from whitey yellow to the golden yellow to that lighty brown, and because you've got the dark sort of underpainting underneath, it looks like bark. So look how cool that looks. And you can get that whitey yellow look, and we can add some little knocks on our bark of these little palm trees. Just use a really fine liner. Again, it's the brush that makes your life a hell of a lot easier. Because it's so small, it's just so easy. You can get really fine detail. So to say, these tutorials are for beginners and intermediate painters. They're really easy. They teach you all these skills. But look, if you want to, you can go photorealistic, as I say. You can do a Murray and go for hours and make all your work look really realistic. So as I say, go at your own speed. Go what's comfortable for you. And all I'm going to do, I'm just going to get a tiny bit of that dark blacky bluey brown that we mixed earlier. And just on the opposite edge, I'm just going to make it a bit more shadowed and harsher. So we've got this really, again, think of yin yang, we've got this really bright white edge, white yellow edge, and then we've got a really dark edge. And I'm going to get some raw sienna. So raw sienna you can make with brown and orange if you haven't got access to it at home. So brown and orange. And what happens with palm trees, you get like areas of the trees where the leaves sort of wither and they turn like an autumn colour and they sort of dry up and die. So where the coconuts are, you get that sort of lovely sort of thready sort of texture that hangs down. So we're going to put some little coconuts here, and we're just going to have some of this sort of raw sienna, lightly brown, just come in from the underneath onto some of these branches. So again, we're just coming underneath. So we're just trying to create some heat, just some highlights. And then where we've got some heat and we've got this nice sort of raw sienna, I'm just going to mix up, sorry it's a bit off camera, but it's exactly the same colour we used for the underpainting, that dark blacky blue, which was black, blue, a bit of raw umber brown and a tiny bit of sap green. It's just my palette was dry. I've had a lot of people ask me how to keep your acrylic paintings dry while you're working, especially on your palette. You can buy a plant mister bottle. So what you spray plants with, you get these little mister bottles, a bit like a perfume bottle. You can give your palette a spray every sort of 10 minutes with one of these little misty bottles. They're again about a couple of dollars, couple of pounds, and you can use it forever. And it's a great little trick if you live in a hot climate or hot country and your palette is drying, just give it a spray. So all I'm doing, I'm complementing the highlights by adding some of these dark shadows. So some of these little branches, creating shadows, creating some texture. We've got some in the shades, some in the light. So again, just by complementing each other, you need the darks for the highlights to shine up. So by laying them first and then just reworking areas, just think where you would have bright shadows, harsh shadows and bright highlights. So that is looking really cool, and we're gonna get some cerulean blue and white, mix up some of that lovely sky colour. And as I say, look, you can poke holes just like we did, and with a flat brush it's even easier. God, this flat brush is so cool. So look, you can just create lines in between your spindly leaves to create gaps in between them. So if you're like me and you've made them a bit too harsh, a bit too chubby, you can get the sharp edge of the brush with some cerulean blue and white and poke some holes in your sky. So as I say, it's nothing you can't fix. Look, if you don't like it, just wipe it away. So So I'm just poking some holes in between the leaves just to make them look prettier. So we've got this lovely tree and we've got this pushback background. And now we're going to bring our ocean and our sand and everything together. So I've measured a straight horizon with a little bit of painting tape, some tape measure and some chalk. The great thing about chalk and painting tape, you can just remove it and it doesn't leave any marks. And if it does pull a little bit of your paint up, if it wasn't dry, you can always re-dry it and just rework it. So we're going to get some cerulean blue and I'm going to add a tiny bit of turquoise, just a tiny bit, just to make it a little bit brighter. I've got mine pre-mixed here, but if you get a little bit of cerulean blue and just add a tiny bit of turquoise to it, but you want it more cerulean blue than anything, and that's going to be our deep water off in the distance. And then we're going to get turquoise and we're just going to merge that into that cerulean blue. So again, it looks a bit musty because obviously we're painting on the burnt sienna. So we'll go over it in a minute when it's dry, but we just want to block in some lovely turquoise tropical water. And then as we come to the beach is going to be like dark sand. So we're going to use this color, which is called yellow ochre. So you can make this with yellow and purple. So we're going to add actually some purple to it, but you can make it with cad yellow and purple if you want to get yellow ochre, if you haven't got it at home. And what we're going to do, we're going to make it this goldeny yellow colour. And this is going to be all our sand that is wet. So where the water retracts back and you get wet sand, it's always a little bit darker. So we're going to use this lovely golden yellow as a nice dark colour. And as it comes towards the viewer, we're just going to add a little bit of white to the mix. Oops, just get a little hair off. So got a little bit more white, just make it less harsh. And we're just going to colour in this bit here. This is going to be all our wet sand as it comes up onto the beach. And then what we're going to do, we're going to get that colour and we're just going to mix it into our turquoise here. Just really gently. And then we're going to get our turquoise and mix that into the mix, just so it bridges the gap between the two colours. We're going to create X shapes like usual. So we're going to create our X shapes, go back and forth, rocking back and forth. And we're going to merge the water into the sand. See how that works? We're going to clean our brush while it's drying. So we're going to clean it. So we've gone from deep water to lighter tropical water to a mix between the turquoise and the brown and into the nice yellow ochre. So now this area is dry, I'm just going to go over it. So again, look how much more vibrant just adding a second layer of paint is. We're going to get our turquoise. We're just going to go over the top, make it look so tropical. Oh, I want to go on holiday. London is just raining constantly. It sucks. So this is one of the reasons I paint these scenes, to cheer me up and imagine that I'm sat here with a nice drink, just chilling out with my family. That'd be nice. So look, there we go. We've got our nice blended tropical ocean water. We're going to remove our tape. And if you didn't dry your painting like me, because I was lazy, oh no, you might have a little bit of a smudge, which I do. If I remove my big hand, look, I had a bit of a smudge. So all I'm going to do, I'm just going to dry my painting, just going to mix some of that lovely horizon colour up, which was white and cerulean blue. Just going to get a little brush, I'm just going to fix it. So just dry it, just paint over it, no one would know. If you haven't got a steady hand, you could always use tape again, but that time make sure you dry it. So look, all we're going to do, look, we're just going to fix areas, and it's like no one would know. So we've got a nice straight horizon with our deep water that's a little bit darker. There we go, going into those lovely trees. And then we've got this blended water going into the wet sand. And because the transition is lovely and soft. Now when we put some detail over the top, it's going to look real. So we're going to get some purple. Now I'm using cool iris purple. You can make that with purple and cobalt blue. We're going to add some yellow ochre to it. So purple and yellow ochre. And we're just going to make a really harsh gold now. So yellow and purple. And you can add a little bit of cobalt blue. And we're just going to have a little bit of sort of a reflection on the water, on the ridge of the water of some of these trees. Just a little reflection coming out. I don't want it too overwhelming because I want to have this sand like shimmering. So just coming out, just so it looks. And where we're going to have some seaweed and stuff that's washed up on the beach, we can just have a little bit of shadow. And then we've got a little bit of cobalt blue just to make it cooler and darker. A tiny bit of white just so it's not as harsh. And a little bit more yellow ochre. Here we go. And we're just going to add some texture. So we're just going to add a little bit of waves just with the sharp edge of the brush. This flat brush is earning its money today. So look, we're going to just create some texture. Just some hints of some waves and some shimmer. There we go. And then we're going to go back to a fine liner and we're going to get a big dollop of white, just pure titanium white, and we're going to outline our lovely seafoam. So this is the lovely carpet edge of the water where it sort of comes into the shore, and we want a nice thick white edge. So we're using a big blob of titanium white, and we're just going to go up and down this edge. It goes a lot more flatter as it goes off into the distance, so we're not going to make it as harsh. We're just going to make it try to be flat and sort of fade out into the distance. Try to be more straight. And then we're going to create little zigzags and little splats to create the illusion of seafoam. And because we worked really hard before and we blended all that beautiful tropical water, now we're putting these zigzags over the top. It will trick your eye and make it look like super realistic tropical water. So all I'm doing, I'm creating little sort of wiggly zigzags with my brush and splats to create bubbles and seafoam and froth. I'm just coming out, as I say, as I go further towards the horizon. If you think the horizon is flat, so down here, look, we're going to create sort of big gaps in between these sort of zigzags. Let's just have some fading off into the distance here. But as we get closer to the horizon, I'm going to try to make them flatter. So the ones down here, they're going to be quite big gaps between them. Look. So let's have some bubbles, look, some splodges. So we're just trying to make them all different shapes and sizes. And I'm trying to make the gaps in between them a bit wider as it comes towards the viewer, just for perspective. So it looks like it's nearer. So have some splodges. So again, just like the trees, try to make them all random. Don't have them all the same. I'm gonna leave a little bit of a gap in the left-hand corner here because I want to sign it here. So I load up my brush. Let's put some splats here. I'm not going to go fully into the left hand corner because I want to sign it, but I kind of have to go around it to frame the painting. So there we go. And have that sort of fading up to that sort of line there that I've put in. Okay. So up here in the distance, look, I'm going to have them really close together and really flat, so it looks like it's fading off. And then I'm going to get some turquoise and white. So I'm going to mix turquoise and white. Lots and lots of white and some turquoise. Just to make a nice pastel turquoise. And just between the ocean and that seafoam, just to bridge it together, I'm just going to use this pastel turquoise just to link the two areas together. So I'm doing the same technique as I go up into the water. I'm getting flatter and almost like completely horizontal lines almost, just so it looks like it's fading off. So I'm just smearing it at the top there because I want it not to be as harsh. So I don't want as much detail. So all these ones here at the top, just by using my finger to smear it, I can sort of push them back. So they're noticeable, look, but they're really soft and it just looks like they're fading off into the distance. So now I'm going to clean my brush and I'm going to get some purple and yellow ochre. So purple and yellow ochre, more purple this time. And again, I'm just going to create some more shadows. So just some harsh shadows of some of these trees reflecting into this wet sand. So the colour's a bit overwhelming, so don't go too dark. As I say, it fades off into the distance here, so I don't want to go too dark. And while I've got that colour, I'm going to use that really sharp edge just to go underneath some of the wave to make it look 3D. So again, try to think where the shade would be, and you can just sort of come around the edge using a fine liner. Really gently, just go around and give it a nice darkened edge. And because it's like a purpley blue with a bit of yellow ochre, it's not as harsh as black and it looks nice and realistic. And then we're going to get some white. Excuse the light, I think I stood in front of it and it bleached the video. And we're going to get a hint of cad yellow, so lots and lots of white, a hint of cad yellow, a dot of orange, a dot of cad orange light, and a dot of purple, just a dot, but predominantly white. And we're going to paint some gorgeous tropical sand. Now the great thing is because we stained the canvas raw sienna, it's got a hint of heat already, and now we're putting this gorgeous bright tropical sand colour. We can make it look like this beautiful white sand that you get in places like the Caribbean and tropical places. It's like Castaway. You could have Wilson and Tom Hanks up here. So there we go. So we're neaten that up in a minute. And then we're going to go back to our flat brush and get some of our purple and yellow ochre. Add a tiny bit of cerulean blue to it. And just here, now we've blocked in our sand, we're just going to have some sort of pastel shadows. So again, it's just reflecting some of those trees, just casting a shadow onto our beach. So again, there could be some here in the foreground, just coming over the edge. All these little tips and tricks for realism. And then we're going to have some seaweed and stuff, so we're just going to have some divots here on the sand, just to finish her off, to make her look really realistic. Just joining this area up. So I'm just using this colour just on some of the shadows. So as I say, by just going over the top sometimes once or twice really makes a difference, just to highlight things. And I'm going to get some pure raw umber brown, and I'm just going to create some washed up leaves and bubbles, the seaweed that sort of come up to the shore. So you have these lovely tropical beaches, and if you've had a stormy day or anything like that, you get sort of leaves and sort of bits of bark and things that fall into the water. So again, just by using a highlight, a fine liner, excuse me, just create little dots and divots. We can create some seaweed and things washed onto the shore for another layer of detail and texture. So let's have a big bit coming down here just to frame the corner. Let's get some more paint on my brush. And while I've got that colour, look, I'm just going to create this edge nice and dark. And the same here on the bottom. Just going to make my tree a bit more noticeable. Here we go. She looks better now. Bring her a bit forward. I'm just going to make her a bit wider, because as I say, you always make your trunk wider. So I'm just going to use some of the colours we used previously just to make her thicker at the bottom here. She needs to be a more chunky mother. So I'm just going to make her a bit wider. I'm just going to use some of that warm yellow that we used. There we go. She looks more realistic now. So a good rule of thumb, always make the base of the trunk where it meets the bottom wider than the top of the tree. Oh, I've got that nice dark colour. Let's just outline her. Just put some of the bark back in. Just little finishing touches. Just by using some of these dark colours, look, you can just make areas just stand out more by just giving them a little bit of a darker outline. Just bring them closer. And then let's just have a little bit of a trunk here. This could be a palm tree here. This could be a big fat baby one that's growing. So we're just using that sort of brown that we created with raw umber and white. Just adding some of the long grass. And as I say, that sort of gold colour. Just yellow, white and a tiny bit of purple. You can get a lovely sort of hot highlight colour. And then I'm just going to get some cerulean blue and white. And I'm going to use my flat brush. And I'm just going to create a little shimmer. So cerulean blue and white, just the same as the horizon. I'm just going to come down really gently. I'm just almost glazing the top here, just to have a bit of the sky colour sort of shining down on the wet sand to create a shimmer. A shimmer. And I'm just going to add a tiny bit more white, just going over the top, just to make it look a bit brighter. So there we go. And then lastly, as I said, with acrylics, they dry a bit flat. So if you want to make your areas look really vibrant, just go over the top of them. So just on this border with the white, I'm just going to go over it again, just to make the border look really, really bright. As I say, it's a horrible, dark, rainy day here in London, so I've got the light on, so it looks a bit bleached. But for realism, when I zoom out, just by giving this a little bit more brightness, it will make it look more realistic. I'm just going to get some blue and brown. And just here in the corner, I'm just going to create a harsh shadow. So we've got these nice pastel shadows for the background trees, and I'm just going to create a harsh shadow for this bad boy here. Just coming down here from the bushes. So blue and browns. And I think she's finished. So I've signed her in the bottom left hand corner. So you've learned how to push back your sky and create wispy clouds in the far distance. We've got this lovely tropical bushes that you've learned how to push back, how to poke holes and how to texturize. And then you've learned how to bring your palm tree forward using darker shades, how to paint gorgeous palm tree trunks and leaves. So we've got this beautiful tree trunk and how to do highlights and detail over the top. You've learned how to do deep ocean water and how to paint tropical water, how to have wet sand and dry sand and add highlights and shadows and detail over the top. So my name is Murray. Thank you so much for watching along at home. Please like and subscribe if you haven't done so already. We have over 100 odd tutorials now. We have plenty of playlists for you to binge, from seascapes to forests to landscapes. So don't forget to like and subscribe, and we'll see you soon. Happy painting, guys. See you soon. Have a nice weekend. Bye.